They say time heals everything, but time, on its own, remembers too. There was a small town near the edge of the sea where two people once promised never to forget each other. Her name was Elena, his name was Daniel. They were children when they met, no more than 9, chasing kites in the field behind the lighthouse. The sky always smelled of salt and wildflowers, and the waves below whispered stories that only they seemed to understand. They grew up in that rhythm, summers wrapped in laughter, winters in long letters passed through fogged windows. When she was 16 and he was 18, Daniel left for the city to study architecture. He promised he'd come back before the autumn ended. Elena believed him. She waited through one autumn, then another. Seasons changed, years passed, and promises faded into postcards with no return address. Daniel built bridges and towers, but lost the bridge back to her. He tried to write, but the words never sounded enough. He told himself he was doing it for them, that someday he'd return successful and proud, able to give her everything she deserved, but life kept delaying that. Someday. He moved from city to city, chasing projects, forgetting birthdays, keeping her photograph folded inside his wallet, creased from being opened too often. She stayed in the seaside town, teaching at the small school near the harbor, her eyes searching the horizon each evening when the ferries came in. People said she should move on. She smiled and said, "Some hearts aren't built for replacements." 20 years later, Daniel came back, not out of triumph, but loss. His wife had passed away, his son had grown distant. He returned to the coast seeking quiet, not expecting ghosts. The town had changed, new cafes, new faces, but the lighthouse still stood, lonely and bright. One afternoon, while sketching the lighthouse for an old habit, he saw a woman placing flowers by the rocks. Something in her movement, the careful, gentle way she set the petals down, felt like memory. When she turned, time folded. It was Elena, older, but still carrying that quiet storm in her eyes. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then she said softly, "You came back late." He answered, "I didn't know how to come back sooner." They walked by the sea as the light faded. The silence between them was filled with all the years they had missed. She told him her mother had passed, that the school was closing next spring. He told her about the cities, the buildings, the loneliness of rooms filled with applause, but not love. She smiled sadly. "You always built things, Daniel, but never stayed long enough to live inside them." He nodded, unable to meet her eyes. That night, he couldn't sleep. The sound of waves kept merging with her voice in his head, so he walked out, past the dunes, to the lighthouse they once climbed as children. The door was still unlocked. Inside, on the lowest step, someone had carved words years ago. "You'll find me here if destiny remembers." The next morning he went to her house. She wasn't home. The neighbor said she'd taken the early ferry to the mainland for supplies. He waited at the dock until sunset. When she returned, she saw him there, holding 2 cups of coffee. They sat on the bench watching the sea turn gold. He said, "I thought destiny forgot us." She said, "Maybe it just took the long way around." From that day they began meeting daily, slowly rediscovering the small rituals that had once made them whole. He helped fix the old school fence. She brought him books she thought he'd like. Sometimes they talked for hours. Sometimes they said nothing. Love had matured into something quieter, like the tide, coming, going, but always returning. Months passed, and Daniel began restoring the lighthouse. He said it was his last project, a home for light. The townspeople laughed, but Elena understood. Every night she brought him tea while he worked, and they'd watch the lamp spin circles into the dark one evening. As a storm approached, he told her, "When I was away, I kept dreaming of this place. I thought maybe dreams were enough, but dreams without you were empty rooms." She touched his face gently, whispering, "Then stop dreaming, Daniel. Stay awake with me." The storm broke then, shaking the sea with thunder. They stayed inside, talking, laughing, crying, while the old lighthouse trembled but never fell. Over the next few years, their bond deepened into something sacred. People in town spoke of them as if they were one soul split between two bodies, but time, once generous, began to turn fragile again. Daniel's health weakened. The long years of travel had worn him down. Still, he worked on the lighthouse every day until one morning he couldn't climb the stairs. She found him sitting by the window, sketchbook in hand, breath shallow but peaceful. He looked at her and smiled. "I finished it." She opened the book. On the last page was a drawing, two figures standing at the edge of the sea, hand in hand, light pouring over them. Beneath it he had written, "Home is not a place. It's where someone waits." That night, as rain whispered against the glass, Daniel slipped away quietly, his head resting against her shoulder. Elena didn't cry at first. She sat beside him until dawn, listening to the sea. Then she lit the lighthouse for the first time in years, letting its beam cut through the storm like a heartbeat refusing to stop. For weeks she returned every night, keeping the light alive. The town began calling it the Light of Promise. Tourists came and went, unaware that every flash of light was a memory, every rotation a breath of love sent into eternity. Years drifted again. Elena grew older, her steps slower. On her last day, she climbed the lighthouse one final time. In her hand, she carried Daniel's sketchbook. She placed it beside the lamp and looked out at the endless water. "We're almost there," she whispered. The horizon shimmered. Some say she saw him standing there, young again, waiting at the bridge of dawn. That night, when the keeper came to check the light, he found it burning brighter than ever though the fuel was gone, and on the glass, traced in salt, were words no one could explain. "Forever returns." Now the lighthouse still stands. On quiet nights, locals claim they hear two voices in the wind, one laughing, one humming a song from long ago. Couples leave flowers by the rocks, believing it brings lasting love. And sometimes, when the sea is calm, the beam of the lighthouse bends slightly toward the horizon, as if still searching, still remembering, because destiny doesn't forget. It waits, patient as the tide, to bring two souls together once more, when the world is quiet and the light is ready to guide them home again. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and share if you enjoyed the story, and subscribe for more stories that touch your heart.